Lamentations 1:1 through 3:36. And in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, came to Jerusalem. He burned the house of the Lord, and the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem. And the army broke down the walls of Jerusalem all around. Then Nebuzaradan carried away captive the people who remained in the city. Now, we've read that before. That's from 2 Kings. But they are being carried off to Babylon, the country that boasted great power and that now has come to destroy everything that the Israelite people cherished and hoped in and believed in. The first word of the book of Lamentations in Hebrew is the word how. How lonely sits the city. So what the book of Lamentations, written by Jeremiah apparently, is about. It's 5 chapters long. It's short. It's all poetic. It's written as an acrostic where the letters of the Hebrew alphabet work through each chapter in various ways. So it's poetry. It's a funeral dirge, basically, as the people look behind them and they see the city and the smoke billowing up from their, shall we say, their past, all burned up. And as they're taken off to Babylon, they are remembering backwards in a sense of questioning, God, how could this be? So the facts that I read there in 2 Kings are now given substance in the book of Lamentations, as though to say, do you realize how much this hurts us as a people? So a couple things about the book. One, there's a recital of the horrors and the atrocities throughout the book. Again, it gives more color, more luster to again a terrible event. You sense in the book the spiritual significance of the loss of this. Again, it just looks like it's a building on a city or on a hill. No, we have, of course, the city was called the perfection of beauty. The walls and the towers were considered in the poetic literature, especially of Psalms, to house the presence of Yahweh. This is Yahweh's house or home. God is in the midst of us, in the midst of these walls. The king, the anointed one. God had given Israel a king, and now he and that whole line is gone. The priests, those who gave the people the ability to have contact, as it were, with the presence of God. The whole idea of worship and approach and atonement, these words are just riddled with value that's spiritually deep and painful to think of losing the sense of this in their coming days. The prophets, without vision the people perish, goes one of the lines in the prophets, and that's the idea of the visions, or the ability for a prophet to know what God wants for the people. Prophets are gone. The land. This is easy to, again, miss because of the modern sensibilities. We think about dying and going to heaven. Their hope was to have a land for their children when they were dead and gone, and now that is gone. And, of course, just the people, the friends, the family, those that died by the thousands here, or those that are carried away. Again, it's hard to overestimate the pain of this moment. And here's where, again, we, in putting the Old Testament story together, we need to emphasize, like this book does, this period, because this is not a small thing. And however we define the New Testament story, we have to put into it this kind of event, because this will be largely the platform upon which the ministry, for example, of Jesus, and how he'll begin talking to the people based on the feelings that have come out of this event. This is also a time of confession. By that I mean, it's one thing to go through difficult times and yet know you're not at fault. Imagine going through this time period and you know, and this is part of the book's discussion, you know that you're at fault. This did not come by mere accident or by God allowing something to happen to an otherwise good people. This is something that they brought upon themselves. And their role, thus, in this whole story is to go to Babylon, as Jeremiah has told them, and stay for 70 years. This will be, in large part, indicative of what that time period in the future called the Day of the Lord will be like. So sometimes they'll refer to this event of the 586 destruction of Jerusalem as the day or the Day of the Lord, but that's always typological for a future day when the destruction upon God's enemies will be much, much more severe. It's also a time of hope, not hope in the sense of looking back to the Exodus or just remembering the good old days. And in a sense, it's not about the hope of the future, because again, we have 70 years to go through, and the people that are going know they will not return. So the hope, in fact, let's read, this is the one of the more famous passages from Lamentations. Listen to the kind of, where the hope is located in the mind of the writer. Though the Lord, this is 3:22 and following, though the Lord's mercies, or through the Lord's mercies we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your, and you know that word now, great is your amunah, faithfulness. Great is your steadfastness to people who are being carted off into Babylon. The Lord is my portion, says my soul, therefore I hope in him. The Lord is good to those who wait for him, to the soul who seeks him. It is good that one should hope and wait patiently for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth. Let him sit alone and keep silent, because God has laid it on him. Let him put his hand, or put his mouth in the dust. There may yet be hope. Let him give his cheek to the one who strikes him, and be full of reproach. For the Lord will not cast off forever, though he causes grief. Yet he will show compassion according to the multitude of his mercies, for he does not afflict willingly, nor grieve the children of men. What is the most difficult thing you've ever been through in your life? And what if it was your fault? That is really the beauty of this confession. It's not as though God's mercies are upon those who are afflicted for someone else's wrongdoing. They can also apply to those who are going through pain even because of their own mistakes. And that's the beauty of God's grace.